Ladies and gentlemen, Season 2, Episode 2, The Return of Quaid. Where they're still in the town, and they've got to help against Weasel, and then they do the end. Before I go any further, I decided to do a little bit more looking into the behind the scenes here, because it's me. And I found out something interesting. What is the most consistent thing we've said positively about this show? The whole time, since the very beginning. Now, we know that this show was Chris Sonnenberg's baby, that he was both the writer and producer of it, and that he had tremendous influence on it. He was a line producer, in addition to just being executive producer. How many of you know where he got his start? And the way I framed this, you already know where I'm going with this. In fact, his career is fascinating. He got started all the way back in the 90s, 1994, on The Lion King as an in-betweener, which is an animation thing. And then he worked in animation for Disney for several years. He worked on Pocahontas, he worked on Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, Tarzan, Emperor's New Groove, until he got up to the point where he was at a show you may have heard of. He didn't do much for it, but he did work on 4 episodes of a show called Futurama. And he was actually a layout artist for Futurama, which is a step up for him. Then he moved up to the point of being an animation director for a few other shows, including Kung Fu Panda 2, and a couple of other things. So, he has been part of the animation department for, let's see. That's about 20 years, 21 years, actually. Then, his very next job, after he left animation, was this show, which he then wrote and produced. He clearly knows his stuff on animation, 100%. And he's clearly front and center on that kind of a thing. But again, I mentioned that writing thing. His career after Tangled is also fascinating, because he's actually only worked on 2 things after Tangled total. Like, his career ran into a wall after Tangled. After the show, excuse me. The Tangled the series, or Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, whatever the hell you want to call it. I'm just going to call it Tangled. Yeah, he knows his stuff. I give him tremendous praise on the animation side of things. 100%. But it is interesting to think about, because I kept commenting, even on my notes for this episode. Remember, we just did this previous episode, that the animation is just so good. I went ahead and watched the opening title of this thing. No wall could come between me and my destiny. I need more time. I do want to marry Eugene someday. Why are these rocks taking me? I think Max has a crush on Fidela. This girl has my back, referring to Cassandra, and then Adira has a sword that cuts through the rocks. Okay. Meanwhile, they're still here. They're still in Vaderos. Okay. And of course, there's assholes and thieves, and everything's terrible. And now that they've run the Baron out of town, everything's going to get better. And then Weasel shows up, and Gideon Emery's like, I am Gideon Emery. Fear my Emery voice. And the muscle follows him, and he's going to expand. He's going to take over, and he's going to start taxing. And okay. And already, I started being pulled out of the episode a little bit, and it's hard to explain why specifically. And I'm just looking at it like, okay. So then she goes to help people, and they're like, oh yeah, you think you're helping these people, but in 4 days' time, I'll be back with even more muscle. Does he realize what he's saying when he's saying that? Because I don't think he is. I think he realizes he's in a Disney production, and they're not going to kill him, or, imprison him, or send him to the nearby authorities, or anything else they could do here. Instead, it's just like, yep, you beat me up, but I'll be back next time with even more muscle. Except even that wouldn't last forever, because he's got a finite pocketbook, and muscle only follows you as long as you're paying them. No matter what, he is the weaker position here, but they all assume that he's completely in the right, and all the townspeople are like, he's right, you've just made things worse. And it's like it's skipping several story and setting beats to just rush forward through this. And it's just like, okay. So they go to try and recruit people, fail miserably. Shorty shows up to be ugly for a second. By the way, this would be a good scene for Varian to comment on her inability to inspire people. And then we go and Vex says that you can't inspire people. Okay, yep. I love the animation. I know I just talked about it, but the way they do the ink flashbacks, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. So then Keith David shows up as Quaid. I'm going to be honest, I didn't catch it was him at first, and I think several of you kind of have the same problem that I did. It took me a moment to really process because his voice acting is very inconsistent. It feels like he was going for the gravelly old Western guy, like the old sheriff who's long since retired. But then every now and again, he just kind of actually acts because he doesn't do a good job with the gravelly voice, which is funny because Keith David just has an amazing voice. Just speak in your normal voice. It's really weird. Yeah, it just kept being weird throughout the course of the thing. And in some cases, I had to actually read the subtitles because I was literally having trouble hearing what he was saying. Meanwhile, we find out that the whole reason that he bailed is specifically because of the fact that, they all failed at me, so I failed at them. No, it is Keith David. Look it up, Russ. I did. Sorry, one moment here, please. Let's go towards Spider-Man, Shantae Advance, and Red Dead Redemption. Thank you, Sean, as always. Much appreciated. Yeah, no, we're just watching Mass Effect at this point. Who else is going to show up? See, now I'm curious. Anyways, so ink styling, montage. He's horribly out of practice. There's this bee pollen pheromone thing. We see that the Baron employed the Collector. But then the people bailed on him, so screw him. But hey, the Collector's still about, so he can still be hired by Weasel, and Shorty is imperiled by Lance, which could have just been Varian again. We get a montage of him cleaning up the town, which means it's about to go badly, which, hey, that's exactly when things go badly. And then a scene happened which is so weird that I lost it. Like, I legitimately paused, rewound. Who's Reg E. Cathy? No, hang on. Now that's interesting. So I still say Keith David here as the voice actor. Ah. That's my fault. Apologies. So originally Reg E. Cathay was doing the voice acting for Quaid and then died. And so the touch-up dialogue was done by Keith David. As usual, you need to put the exclamation mark before the Q, Sluggeretta. That would explain it, Ross. That would also explain the inconsistency. And why I had trouble even telling that it was Keith David. Yeah. Wow. That's terrible. Pro tip, next time just redub everything. What do I think of South Park? About half the time it's extremely funny, and the other half the time it's gross and boring. So then there's a scene that, like I said, completely took me out of the moment. Because it turns out that Quaid wasn't in on it. Like, they staged that thing, that really, really, really obvious thing where Lance, who is obviously Lance, is a terrible actor, and Shorty is like, oh my god, save me. And then Quaid goes on to save the whole town, but because of that one staging thing, he didn't know? I was so thrown by this. I was so, like weirded out by this that I didn't realize that he wasn't in on it from the beginning. And I had to go rewatch the scene to verify that apparently they never actually told him the plan. Yeah, I thought this was a deliberate setup, that he was also part of the setup. And then I realized why it's here. Because this is the third act breakup. And if you know anything about me, you know that I tend to rant about the third act breakup, because it's usually trash. And oh, here we are. Because this is a terrible third act breakup. It's artificial, comes out of nowhere, completely flies in the face of logic and reason, and is only here so we can have a bit of drama and have our down point before he shows up, and it's the cavalry. And he is. He's the cavalry moment. The entire team completely fails to take down this Super Doom collector guy. By the way, I do like the steampunk aesthetic of this guy. It makes me wonder if Varian should have been here to try and geek out over all the gimmicks and gadgets he has. Moving on. And then, you know, no, the collector was actually cool. Thumbs up there. And then they defeat him. Yay, the cavalry has shown up. And, okay. And there's a big action sequence, and everything's cool. And then the episode just very, very, very abruptly ends. Like, to the point where in my actual notes, I was confused by it, because I was in the middle of typing something about the previous scene, and then I was confused because the credits music started playing. You gotta do more than that, Sluggeretta. What about them? They're both characters. I need a metric. So yeah, conflict concluded. The end. What? I didn't like this one. I'm not gonna lie to you. I like the concept of this one. I like the idea of them acknowledging that they need to do something more in the places that they're sitting. I like the idea of, you know, following through on the adventure. I like the idea of let's try and help the surrounding areas reclaim themselves and get better. That's a logical path for Rapunzel, who is doing a moving journey. Like, right? There's a lot of things that could be pretty cool here, and there's some cool concepts and there's some cool moments. As usual, the animation is freaking amazing, and the Collector was a cool and interesting villain that they didn't do anything with. Yeah, I think if they'd... It doesn't even necessarily need to be longer, Loke. It's more like if they'd shrunk some of the time for other scenes to flesh out time for the scenes that really needed time to grow and breathe, I think this could have worked really solidly. Completely eject the third act, you know, the third act drama thing, the third act breakup. Remove that, squeezes in several additional minutes here so you can move the final battle forward, and then he shows up and they do the bee thing and they defeat him. That's cool. And then we could have like a bit more of a follow through and see where things are going and blah, blah, blah. But instead it's just, we're done. What? It's confusing. So yeah, no. I don't think it's as bad as a blue, but this definitely stumbles down into a green. This was a weird one. Like I said, I was not into this. And I was confused. The episode kept confusing me. I'm not going to blame it for the voice acting thing. That's awful, and I have nothing further to say about that. But the whole thing was just... Yeah, this is the kind of thing that I could probably skip in the future, and that's a damn shame. But now, if you're paying attention, they're still in the town. Like, as of this moment. So are we going to do a time skip? Are we going to start the next episode in the town? I have no idea. But we will find out next episode, because the next episode is Season 2, Episode 3, Goodbye and Goodwill.